But before we bring Chris on, just a really quick breakdown that I want to do for folks who are patrons. Y'all know on Sunday, Matt and I talked about some of the degrowther movement, and we played a clip from Andrea Vetter, who is one of the leading degrowthers, where she, basically said that she doesn't really see a role, or she would like to, but she doesn't think it is open to have the working class in the United States and in Europe participate in the fight for decoupling from fossil fuels. She called working class people profiteers, um, which I find to be really extremely nasty. And this will be a quick segment, but I just wanted to make a quick point about the class nature of climate change, because you're seeing this, I think, more and more frequently from folks who are, I think a lot of people who, even if I disagree with, I think their heart's in the right place, right? They want to see things change. But there's increasingly this really pessimistic view of working class people in the United States and North America in general, and in Europe. And, this argument that basically they are the beneficiaries and the recipients of, the global exploitation, when in fact it is the capitalists and the people at the top who are the ones deciding to exploit other countries and the rest of the world, and are also the ones who are enjoying those benefits. But one of the regular talking points of some of these degrowthers and people who basically are demonizing working class people is to sort of look at the mode of living of working class people, like not the rich, like working class people, and basically calling them things like, I mean, they'll be blunt about it. They'll say Americans are fat, and they live too nicely and they need to see their standard of living decline. That's something I fundamentally disagree with, and I just wanted to bring up some facts to show people why this narrative is not only, I think, morally odious, politically incompetent, but also just factually wrong. This is a study that just came out, um, which came out recently in Nature, on global carbon inequality over 1990. And the point here is that, like most other things, climate change is not immune to the class dynamics in society. Climate change is class war. And it is working class people all across the globe who are paying the price in climate change and the changes to our environment, for the benefit of the rich. So in this study, they look at per capita emissions by different groups based on income. And if you can see here, let me just move us over real fast. You can see here, there's a very clear story. You don't have to be a statistician to sort of get the argument here that, oh, look, in North America, the bottom 50% of people are responsible for 10% of emissions, middle 40%, 21.8%, and the top 10% are responsible for 68.8%. You see, it's the most stark in America, no doubt about it. A lot of that has to do with being a very car-centric culture, the excessive consumption of the rich. But again, like if you look at this right here, you see the bottom 50% of Americans are very much in line with what the goals for consumption would be, for a society that had a lower carbon footprint, right? So this narrative that, like, the American working class, the bottom 50% here, are the people who are sort of driving climate change is just erroneous. Next clip, just for comparison's sake, you can look at other parts of the world and you see the stark inequality, right? And the point here is not to say that there's not dramatic inequality, but there's absolutely, it is correct to say that there is a stark inequality globally in carbon emissions. But this idea that it's being driven by the working class in the United States or even in Europe is just wrong, as you can see here. And we're going to have Matt Huber on the program soon too. But I also just want to remind folks, to remember also a lot of times, these kind of like even this example here, which sort of paints a very stark picture, like doesn't even tell the full story. This is a piece from Matt Huber in the Tribune: "The Rich Drive Climate Change by Owning the Means of Production." And he says the basis of these studies, talking about other studies that sort of are looking at carbon footprints, is household income data and an inferred relationship with spending patterns associated with emissions or carbon footprints. So it's no surprise that someone like Thomas Piketty, a world famous analyst of income inequality, would use this data to link such inequality to carbon emissions. But income is not the best way to understand inequality under capitalism. A plumber could have the same income as a college professor. The plumber could also have the exact same income if they ran their own plumbing business or if they worked for a massive plumbing corporation. For Marxists, class and inequality has to do with your relationship to the means of production. More broadly, class is less about how much money you make and more about what you own and control. For the vast majority of us, we only own our own labor to sell in the market to live. For the rich, it is their ownership of property, business, and monetary wealth itself that makes them so powerful in a capitalist society. A pervasive assumption among these studies is that the rich are themselves polluters or high emitters. This assumes the emissions associated with consumption are solely their own. The studies focus on behavior of the rich, frequent flying, SUV driving, and meat eating as all emission intensive consumer behaviors. This makes intuitive sense within the lens of carbon footprint accounting. Who else is polluting but us when we press the gas pedal in our cars and our emissions come out the tailpipe? Yet, what about the oil company that sold us the gasoline that is burned to create those emissions? Placing 100% of the responsibility for emissions on consumers is an ideological trick of market exchange under capitalism. As consumers, we only confront commodities and their prices. We feel free and make choices in this market. And this is a really important thing. Like for example, American consumption patterns, right? You don't have the option in a lot of places. I don't have it here of not driving a car to get around. So you are going to have a higher, carbon footprint. But again, these are decisions that are made by the rich and the powerful in the society, not by individuals, which is why a lot of this kind of eco-pessimistic stuff that we're getting from the degrowthers, I find to be wrong because like we do need public transit. We do need to reduce our emissions and all these things. But to be able to confront that, we have to be looking at the root causes of why certain societies consume so much and produce so many emissions. And to be serious about that and to change that, we have to look at the root causes here, and it's the people who are in control of the system, not the everyday people who are just trying their very best to get by and get along. So we'll have Matt Huber on the program in a couple weeks to talk more about this. We always love having Matt Huber on, but I don't know. I think it's an important point to make because I'm pretty damn tired of some of these more pessimistic people out there who are sort of looking at working people in a country like America, for example, where the people are dying younger than they ever have, where some like 20% of people struggle to put food on the table, saying that they are the cause instead of the Jeff Bezoses, instead of Exxon, instead of BP. If we're not serious about directing our anger at the real people who cause this problem, we're not doing our jobs as left.